Black water slides past the drone's bow. No moon, no wake. The night vision feed jitters, then sharpens. Pale fuel tanks filling the upper third of the screen, closer than they should be. Range 2.4 kilometers. The drone isn't searching anymore. It's already inside. The electric motor holds steady. No radar warning, no challenge call. The shoreline remains dark. No patrol lights, no thermal spikes, no movement. A second drone ghosts into view on the left edge of the feed. Then a third, wider, offset. The formation tightening without a word spoken. Range 1.9 kilometers. The operator's hand doesn't hover this time. A confirmation box flashes once. Link locked. Guidance active. From here, the drone won't turn around. There's no remote abort. No manual correction once the run begins. The tanks swell larger on screen, filling the frame as the waterline disappears beneath the bow. Somewhere on the other side of the darkness, something is about to realize it was never being watched. The shoreline doesn't react. No searchlights snap on. No patrol craft cut across the harbor mouth. The drone keeps running straight, its guidance holding the line as the fuel complex expands across the feed. Inside the camera view, heat signatures begin to separate. Pipes, pumps, storage walls radiating faintly against the cooler night air. The software tags them automatically, outlines flickering as the processor struggles to keep up. Still nothing moves. Several kilometers inland, a low-priority alert blinks inside a regional security post. A surface anomaly. Weak return, logged as background noise. Its confidence score degraded by sea clutter and by earlier false positives already dismissed during the shift. The contact isn't tracked. It isn't handed off. It isn't escalated. That single non-decision compounds. A radar operator assumes another station will confirm. A camera feed refreshes a second too late. A supervisor remains undisturbed because the anomaly doesn't cross a numerical threshold designed for faster, louder threats. In another room, another system sees the same disturbance, but without correlation. It remains isolated, unremarkable, forgettable. Back on the water, the lead drone adjusts by fractions of a degree, compensating for cross-current and wake interference from distant civilian traffic. The second and third drones widen their spacing further now, each sliding toward its own approach lane. Geometry chosen hours earlier, executed without coordination or radio emission. Range 1.6 kilometers. A floating barrier drifts into view off the starboard side. It's positioned correctly, anchored where regulations say it should be. But its sensor buoy is dark, its reporting interval delayed. No alarm is tied to its breach. The drone slips past. A shoreline camera briefly loses contrast as a cloud passes overhead. When the image stabilizes, the water is already empty again. Inside the facility perimeter, a thermal camera finally flags movement near the waterline. The alert appears late, buried beneath maintenance notifications and routine system chatter. A guard leans forward, unsure whether what he's seeing is motion or reflection. He hesitates. Not long, just long enough. By the time the image resolves into shape, the object is already inside the exclusion zone. Phones begin ringing after that. Not cleanly, not in sequence. A question without context. A report without confirmation. Each call arrives just late enough to matter less than it should. On the drone feed, the target no longer flickers. It fills the frame, and the last remaining window to stop what's coming closes without a sound. The drone doesn't hesitate. The guidance box stays green as the final approach compresses into seconds. Water breaks harder against the bow now, the shoreline light smearing across the lens as speed holds constant. Range 300 meters. The fuel tanks dominate the frame, steel walls streaked with condensation, pipes running low along their base. The targeting outline snaps tight, no longer flickering. The system doesn't ask again. The feed cuts for half a second as the charge arms. Then the image returns, closer, faster, until the waterline vanishes and the camera is nothing but metal. Impact is silent on the operator's end. A white bloom floods the screen, overexposing the sensor as the detonation punches inward, not outward. Pressure folding through the tank wall before venting skyward. A second flash erupts to the then another farther down the complex. The staggered timing isn't random. Each strike lands just far enough apart to avoid overlapping blast shadows. Fire rolls upward in thick columns, orange tearing through the night as secondary ignitions race along exposed piping. On shore, alarms finally trigger, overlapping tones out of sequence. Floodlights snap on too late, cutting through smoke instead of darkness. A security vehicle skids to a stop near the perimeter fence. Its headlights catch nothing but drifting embers and rising heat distortion. Inside the control feed, The remaining drones disappear one by one. Not destroyed, not intercepted, simply gone. Their signals terminating exactly where they were meant to. The last frame freezes on fire climbing the tank wall, the heat signature saturating the sensor until the image collapses into static. The action is already finished. Everything else is just reaction. The fire doesn't spread all at once. It crawls. Flames cling to the base of the tanks, then race upward as internal pressure vents through ruptured seams. Valves shear open under heat, dumping fuel into channels never meant to carry it in volume. Secondary explosions crack through the complex. Not spectacular, but structural. Each one compromises another subsystem. A pump station here, a control valve there, a pressure regulator never designed to fail under flame. Inside the control room, screens drop offline in clusters. Temperature warnings stack faster than they can be acknowledged. One operator reaches for a shutdown command and freezes as another alert overwrites it. There isn't a clean sequence anymore. Fire crews arrive in waves. Foam cannons engage, then stall as pressure drops. Pumps cycle. Restart. Fail again. Commanders argue over whether to flood entire sections of the site, knowing it will permanently disable equipment that hasn't yet been damaged. As minutes stretch into hours, fatigue sets in. Decisions slow. Coordination frays. Teams rotate, but information doesn't transfer cleanly. Smoke thickens and spreads low along the shoreline before rising. Access roads clog as vehicles are turned away. Tanker trucks idle, then reverse course entirely. Drivers given no explanation beyond orders to clear the area. Further down the pier, a ship's auxiliary generators kick on unexpectedly. Lights flicker as onboard systems compensate for a loss that didn't originate on board. Crews scramble to diagnose a fault that exists somewhere else. Harbor traffic halts. Schedules unravel. Small delays accumulate into missed windows that can't be recovered the same day. Radio traffic grows chaotic. Instructions change mid-sentence. No one has a complete picture, only fragments. Heat here, pressure loss there, visibility collapsing everywhere. By dawn, containment has replaced recovery as the objective. The site is no longer a single problem. It's a disruption radiating outward, across ports, roads, supply schedules, and planning cycles that now have to adapt without warning. All of it triggered by a few silent minutes on the water. By mid-morning, the fire is no longer the primary problem. The damage is. Crews move cautiously through areas that were still burning hours earlier, stepping over warped piping and collapsed support frames. Heat lingers in the steel, forcing repeated pauses as sensors confirm whether sections are safe to enter. Every assessment uncovers another limitation. Some valves respond, others don't. Manual overrides work in one sector and fail completely in the next. Teams isolate damage only to discover that shutting down one system starves another of pressure or power. Temporary fixes are discussed, then abandoned. Nothing connects cleanly anymore. Engineers begin tagging equipment for replacement rather than repair. Each tag represents not just damaged hardware, but time. Days or weeks before normal function can be restored, assuming replacement parts are available and transport routes remain open. Coordination meetings stretch longer than planned. Each department arrives with partial information, each dependent on data that hasn't been verified yet. Timelines slide forward in increments, never backward. Outside the perimeter, the effects stack quietly. Fuel deliveries scheduled for the afternoon are postponed. Some are rerouted. Others are canceled outright. Vehicles idle longer than expected. Backup stocks are accessed earlier than planned. None of it feels dramatic in isolation, but the margin disappears. What had been a buffer becomes a constraint. What was routine becomes conditional. Decisions that once assumed availability now carry a caveat. As the day wears on, attention shifts from extinguishing flames to managing absence. What isn't arriving? What can't be moved? What must wait? By the time the site is declared stable, normal operations remain a distant goal. The fire is out. The disruption isn't. This wasn't a breakthrough in firepower. It was a breakdown in assumptions. Rear area infrastructure has long relied on distance as protection. Facilities far from the front line were defended against threats commanders expected. Aircraft, missiles, large surface combatants. Systems were optimized to see far, classify clearly, and respond decisively. Sea drones exploit what sits between those steps. They operate below urgency thresholds, too small to prioritize, too slow to seem dangerous, too quiet to demand immediate escalation. Each defensive layer works in isolation, but the transition between them, where a human must decide something matters, becomes the point of failure. That's the contrast. Traditional defense seeks certainty before action. These systems weaponize ambiguity. Fuel hubs fit that logic perfectly. They aren't symbolic targets. They don't deliver instant visual victory, but they sit at the center of everything that moves. Vehicles, generators, ships, and the logistics flows that modern warfare quietly depends on. Disrupting them doesn't end a war. It complicates every decision after. Defending against this kind of threat scales poorly. Every inlet, every harbor mouth, every stretch of dark water becomes a potential avenue of approach. Coverage gaps multiply faster than manpower or sensors can fill them. The attacker's burden stays low. The defender's grows without limit. Losing a drone barely registers. Failing to stop one ripples outward for days. What this strike demonstrates isn't a single vulnerability, but a persistent condition. Control at sea is no longer defined solely by dominance of open water or the ability to intercept visible threats. It now depends on managing uncertainty and recognizing that the most damaging actions may arrive quietly, long before anyone agrees an attack is underway.